the thing I want to echo to our young men, they have to be affiliated with something, a church, a club, or something that's going to hold them accountable and then hold the system accountable. Because as they come and take you and I off the street, if no one's there to account for us but our dysfunctional family, that's not going to get it.
Well, see, I agree with you, but then I think we have to hold ourselves accountable for that.
We're too vulnerable. They can come and take anybody right off the street and nobody's saying anything.
I agree with you. I'm not
because I grew up when we were not segregated, and I realize now I was better off then being in my dysfunctional family because my dad wasn't around, but I had all the other mentors around who said I could be somebody. I can go to school, I can learn. No matter how you start the race, it's how you finish the race that really matters.
I've had this argument with these older gentlemen who say it's the kids' fault. And my argument is it's the community's fault. It's got to be holistic. You can't sit here as men and look at the kids and say, oh, look at what you're doing. Because as men, it's our responsibility to protect our community. That's true. To control ourselves and to control those who would like to influence our community. I would agree with you.
That's
what I've been telling these guys. It's the kids are acting bad, right? But it's up to us to check them.
That's true.
We have to reach out to them, but because there's this fear of the youth, we don't even talk to them. We drive by and look at them in our cars. All we have to do is really, reach out and say, hey, what's going on? And how you doing? What's going on? Just talk to them.
Other problem I see in our community too is the ones who have made it extremely time management. They walk around arrogant. They walk around not caring, not giving back. And if we have that kind of attitude, all it is going to be a matter of time before that same thing come knocking on our doors.
Right.
The realm that we disproportionately incarcerate our children of color, we disproportionately suspend them. All of those things may be true, which would suggest that there's some sort of problem with behavior of our kids. But if you objectively look at the statistics in terms of violence, in terms of crime rates and whatnot, what you would actually find is that our crime rate is at its lowest point since I think 1972 or maybe even longer. So if you look at that, then our actions, our authoritative actions, our institutional response to these children is not in accord with actual activity. And if it's not in accord with the actual activity, then something else has happened. And so in dealing with that, you have to get the system first to acknowledge that we have this problem that's leading to disproportionate incarceration. We have these issues such as House Bill 2712 that's going to further foster an environment in which people are disproportionately incarcerated that's going to adversely impact economic opportunities for young children who are actually doing better than I did, you did, maybe Priest did, and several other people. So we have to acknowledge that. Now, is that the only thing that we have to acknowledge? No. We also have to acknowledge that holistically is a responsibility of those in positions of power, all of us that are here, also to stand up and say, first, we're not going to allow you to damage the identity of our children by misrepresenting who they are, right? That's the first thing. Secondly, we're going to provide academic avenues and true opportunities that allow them to succeed to the highest degree in their whatever chosen field of endeavor that they have. But as long as we're protecting their identity and promoting their belief that they may in fact have some sort of opportunity to create their vision, then we're putting them in a place where they can get through so many more stumbling blocks on their own than they could with us grabbing them and saying, you have to do this. So that's why we have concerns about things like House Bill 2712, disproportionate incarceration in light of the fact that the crime rate is at its lowest point in 40 years. That's why you have to point out this hypocrisy in the system, because you're protecting the identity of people that aren't necessarily in a place to protect their identities, because their identities are still being formed. Who they are still being formed. They're in high school, they're 14 or 15 or 16 or 17 years old. And I have personal experience with this because, especially with House Bill 2712, and what I would say in reference to this is we've been through it before. There's a database that's already there. And I can tell my personal story in which I was grabbed in the U District at age 15, thrown up against a wall, and accused of jaywalking when I didn't, sent to a serious offenders class, and then fast forward 10 years later, after I graduated from undergrad, before I've gone on to law school, applying for my very first job out of college, criminal background check is conducted, and something called a JUVIS number pops up. And what is a JUVIS number? A JUVIS number is a tracking number, and it's a tracking number for those that have been in violation of the criminal law as a youth, as a juvenile. So I almost lost a job opportunity over an alleged jaywalking that never occurred because me and 2 other black children who were doing well in high school ended up getting thrown against a wall on the Ave and told not to come back. That's the danger of House Bill 2712, because it further legitimizes that level of profiling. And when they create a database like that, when they allow for that sort of activity, it impacts the identity of our children. So I think it's critical for us to point out, and always point out, that our crime rate, which is at the lowest point in 40 years, is remarkably low if you compare it to similarly situated cities, is not matching our incarceration rate of minority children. We have a worse incarceration rate here than in places such as Mississippi.
That's
right? And we have to address that, especially as alleged leaders of communities. We have to address that by first saying it, and then first standing in front of our children and saying, we're not going to allow you to adversely impact the identity of this child here simply because he wears the styles of the day for teenagers. And you've decided that that's gang affiliated, and that is at the heart of so much here.
King County spends over 60% of its budget for law enforcement and locking up folks and stuff like that. I mean, that's crazy. We rather lock up someone and take away a swimming pool or a library.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, the Ollie Barnes case is a case in point. They spent $600,000 defending against a lawsuit where they ended up giving out $180,000. So what would have to be addressed there is you could have spent $350,000 or $400,000 on improving your system and your accountability and making sure that everybody that finds themselves in Seattle feels as though they're treated equitably, right? Feels as though they have full human status, but we don't do that here. We're much more interested in protecting the legitimacy of the system than protecting the opportunities of children of color and the poor.
We need to see people, not only in Seattle, not only in Tacoma, not only in Puyallup, not only in Federal Way, not only in Spokane, not only in Chehalis, not only in Bremerton, but people all across Washington State calling the state legislature and telling them to kill Bill 2712. We need to flood the offices of the Senate that's voting on the bill on Wednesday, before Wednesday the 27th, and let them know that we disapprove of this bill. If the bill passes, it'll be devastating.
Well, it passes.
There's a public hearing February 27th, next Wednesday at 3:30. And so then after the public hearing, I think a week and a half later, they vote on it. Don't quote me on that, but one thing is for certain is that February 27th at 3:30 is a public hearing in Olympia on this. Call the Caravan to get together at 23rd and Jackson at 12 noon on Wednesday, so we can just head out there.